Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Want to know how Tony Walker Financial can help thousands of savers worry less about money in retirement? Well, stay tuned as we discuss the second pillar to a perfect retirement plan, keeping things simple.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the WorryFree Retirement, with your host, retirement specialist and six-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Well, welcome folks to the WorryFree Retirement, and yes, I am that little man in the sweater vest, retirement planning specialist and the world's friendliest financial fiduciary, Tony Walker. And today, as we continue our series on the 4 pillars we use to help our clients create a perfect retirement plan, let me introduce 2 young pillars of strength here at the WorryFree Production Studio who keep this show going each week. America's favorite financial sidekick, Mr. Aaron Orender, along with Louisville, Kentucky's most laid-back graphics artist, Mr. Derek Hudson. Okay, let's say you are like the hundreds of people who reach out to us each and every year for help with their retirement. Savers who are looking for someone they can trust with their life savings to assure that they can use and enjoy their money in retirement without the fear of one day running out. Where are you going to turn for help, and how do you know whether that organization you're about to trust with your money is truly going to be there not just when you retire, but all the way through retirement? And just as importantly, how is that firm who is promising to keep you worry-free in retirement going to pull it off? Well, as we begin our new series, last week, there are basically 4 pillars we use at Tony Walker Financial to help create the perfect retirement plan, and here they are. Number 1, your finances must be organized. Number 2, which is the topic for today's show, your plans must be simplified. Pillar number 3, the plan you have in place must have a seasoned, trained retirement specialist with a firm that can orchestrate. And then finally, the perfect retirement plan must have others around you to facilitate. So to kick off pillar number 2, simplify, and to explain how we at Tony Walker Financial are experts in how to keep things simple, let me introduce 2 of our staff here in the Louisville office. First of all, my favorite son-in-law and fellow fiduciary, Mr. Trey Juergens, along with the person in charge of helping new clients and current clients move money from other firms and other 401ks to our custodians at Tony Walker Financial, Mr. Craig Davis. Well, good morning, gentlemen. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for being on. Wanted to start with you, Trey. As we think about this idea of people coming in to meet with me, new clients and sometimes even current clients are coming in for a review, and they say, hey, I'm ready to move money over. I want to transfer money. I'm ready to add money to my accounts. We call this the onboarding process. And what have we done over the years to really simplify this process?
Yeah, we really refined this in probably the last 18 months. Is they want us to handle everything, and they just assume in this magical financial world that we can just go get this money. However, it's kind of the help us help you phase, and we need to collect statements. We need to understand how this money is currently invested, where exactly is this money, what custodian, and once we're able to find all that out, we can jump in and help.
And you all do such a good job of that. And one reason we have Craig Davis here. Craig, how long have you been at Tony Walker Financial now?
18 months.
18 months?
Almost 2 years, yeah, almost 2 years now.
Nice. Yeah, Derek was just talking about he's coming up on 5 years. I don't know. I was going to say, what do you want, a medal?
Hey, what do you want? A medal?
And you just came from Glasgow. When did you transition back to your hometown here in Louisville? When was that?
That was 18 months ago.
That was 18 months ago. So you started in Bowling Green, didn't you, for just a little while? And
about 6 months in Bowling Green, yeah.
Okay, yeah. And we got a new client from Glasgow the other day. And by the way, I think you're involved in their case a little bit, but they said hello and what a great guy you were. So I think they miss you in that community a great deal.
I hear every once in a while people see me on TV. They'll shoot me a text and say, saw you. I was watching the show and saw you this week.
Well, good deal. And you're doing such a great job here. And one reason we kind of wanted you up in the Louisville area, we are very, very busy up here. And as Trey said, with this onboarding process, once he kind of reviews everything, make sure we've got everything in place. Obviously, Juanita Jackson helps a lot there. But we want to talk about how complicated it can be on our poor saver clients to get that money over and where we come in to help. And I thought I'd just like you to share a few examples, if you would, of things that you've run into since you're in charge of moving that money over and what savers can expect and why we think the financial world has made this so complicated.
Two of the things I've seen recently, one is that there's so many acquisitions these days, especially if you're in medical, if you're in the healthcare industry, manufacturing, a lot. One company absorbs another company, acquires another company. And so I remember I dealt with someone, maybe around Franklin, somewhere around there, and they said, I've worked in the same building for 25 years, but I've had 4 different employers.
Wow.
And so, when you get on to do a rollover, especially if they've not set up a lot of the security stuff beforehand, they don't have a phone number on file to receive a text, they don't have an email, they've not set any of that information up with the custodian, then they start asking security questions like, what was your hire date? Which seems pretty obvious, except that your employer's changed a number of times, even though you're still in the same spot. And they'll commonly say, well, which time, right? With which company? I'm still doing the same job after all these years, but what was my hire date? What was my end date? Those things that seem easy can be pretty frustrating. And if you don't get it right, you don't gain access to the account. They just end the call. They say if they call back on another day. So those kinds of things can be pretty difficult. Sometimes you'll just start with the call center, and so you end up maybe in Southeast Asia or in South Asia somewhere, and accent, dialect sometimes can be a little bit of a challenge. You'll get a number of transfers or holds. Yesterday we were doing a rollover, and they came on and said, your expected hold time is 20 minutes. And so then I can say, well, let me just let you drop off and I'll add you back in when we have a representative. And so we do those kinds of things for the client just to make it a little easier, because they do drag that out sometimes just to make it more difficult to get the funds moved over.
So that's a good point. So a lot of these rollover calls, we do a lot of those. They can be done in the convenience of somebody's own time frame, maybe whether at work or home. And that way, if you do run into, you're getting very experienced at this, you probably have a gut feeling thinking, man, this is going to take a while. So at least we can call them back, but we're facilitating. We'll talk more about facilitation in another show, but we're facilitating all that. I guess what I'm saying is the poor old client, give us a picture of what that would look like, Craig, if they tried to call these 401k custodians on their own in some cases.
Well, we just had a situation recently with, this was actually a liquidation call, I think, but they'll just, with the call on the custodian, they'll drag it out, they add extra questions, they start to tell you reasons they can't do things, and then when they realize that somebody from our office is on the line, the situation changes.
They cooperate a little more, but
it just all of a sudden things become smoother. Yeah, and so, but there are some times where a client will just call in. They get one custodian I'm thinking of in particular. They'll keep you on the phone for an hour just with more and more information. Have you thought about this? Have you considered that? And there have been times where I've just had to break in and say, the client is asking for the paperwork. Is there any reason you can't just send that form today? And they'll say, no, there's no reason. I can just send it along right now. So sometimes it's just a more experienced voice to recognize we're stalling, we're wasting time, we're just trying to wait this poor client out.
So more proof that my theory is financial institutions are much more excited to get your money than give it back. And Trey, and sometimes we get paperwork in from, pensions, unions, things like that. The paperwork, when these folks bring this in, how intimidating is some of this paperwork to fill out?
Wow, they worked for 40 years and then they get 40 pages of paperwork that's been harder than 40 years worth of work combined. And they bring it to us, we fill it out all the time. A lot of these big pension packets, Craig's familiar with, it's very easy for us to fill it out, but for them, it stresses them out to the max. So by bringing that in, allowing us to help with it, a lot of the time you have to collect identification documents, birth certificates, marriage license, all that. We do it all the time. They retire once. We do this a dozen times in a week. So by allowing them to lean on our specialty and helping with that is a huge relief.
And speak to real quickly here, in essence of time, Trey, people who are rushing out right now, and we're seeing this, are getting a lot of annuities. They're not getting any of attention. And then they come in and want to move those annuities over to that. How problematic can that be to move those annuities over, and why is that a problem?
Yeah, they make this big commitment to turn this money over because of a nice sales pitch at a dinner seminar or an educational workshop. And once they realize they don't know what they just did, the dust settles maybe 3-6 months later. Unfortunately, after the time that they could possibly move that, they come to us looking for help. They know we know a lot about these annuity products, but unfortunately they've gotten into a situation where they're kind of stuck.
Yeah. And then I know you, Craig, got a list of things. Is there anything else? I've got 4 or 5 instances. You want to share another instance or two with the audience of things that can be problematic and complicated and how we can simplify when they're moving money to us?
But we've had a few times recently where a client will say, well, my account's with a certain custodian, when really there's an actual, what they call third-party administrator, another company completely that actually handles the paperwork. So if you call, then call the big company, they're going to transfer you to the small company. The small company is going to say, oh, there's additional paperwork that's required. Sometimes they'll email it. Lots of times the only option is to send it in the mail. And then again, you have a packet that might be 25 pages long, and really you only need 3 of those pages to be turned back in. So just helping them work through, okay, who's the person at my employer that needs to sign off in this document? How do I handle that? I'm working remotely, and so I've never even met the person that's works for my HR, and so we try to help them with all those little steps.
And then finally, Trey, and this is not a knock on the big institutions, but a lot of these big institutions try to set up these retail offices, especially in Louisville. There's quite a few. But what's the problem there if you're trying to work even with a big institution that, quote, has a local retail office?
Yeah, it's usually we've talked about it before on the show, the revolving door. You go 1 week, you might get an answer you really like, and you go back 2 weeks later, that person's now selling cars somewhere. So you just don't have any continuity, and that's what's beautiful about our planning is it is simple. But beyond the simplicity, these game plans, they have a lot of continuity. You call in and speak to Heather, you call in and speak to Wes, myself, or you're going to get the same answers because we're drawing these game plans up to be followed well into retirement.
Yeah, and Craig, even you've only been with us 18 months now, but can you imagine doing the volume of work you're doing to help facilitate all this without that game plan? Speak to how you reference the game plan when you're moving money over.
And certainly there, because lots of times even the client's seen the game plan, they've got their binder, but when I'm sort of just verifying before me, so this 100% of this is going to Charles Schwab, and then they say, I don't know. And so, yeah, and so then I just say, okay, let's get the game plan out and say, here's what's happening. This is step 1, this is step 2, but first it's all going to Charles Schwab. Those kinds of things can help them with, or if they're calling, sometimes for a distribution, I'll help them with those things. I can look at their game plan and just see where they are in retirement. Are you on track? Or are you getting ahead? Are you behind? Those sorts of things. So yeah, those are documents that I'm in every day for sure.
So here's what I would really like to say as a summary. A lot of saver clients, the people we help, are not really worried about what custodians handle in their 401k. It's always, what's that big bold number at the bottom? How much do I have? And when you turn it over to a retirement planning specialist, that's what you're trusting us to plan for is that big number. But we can help get that money where it needs to be in these game plans. So I think that's really it, is if you've got a 401k and you don't know much about it, but you know you've got some retirement money, let us see how we can help you.
And I'd say one more thing, that's a really good point. We're seeing more and more advisors retire. Some are passing away, changing firms. So again, we can help them move that money over at any time if they'd like to do that.
Absolutely. Just give us a call at any time. We'd be happy to help.
Well, thanks, guys. Enjoyed very much having you on the show. Thanks for all the work you do. Folks, we will be right back. This is the Worry-Free Retirement. Don't let the fear of running out of money in retirement keep you up at night. Turn your 401k into mailbox money for life by logging on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com or call 877-499-9255. Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a buyout? Has the company you work for moved, been acquired, or closed its doors forever? And finally, do you have a 401k with a previous employer you'd like to move to safer territory? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k or lump sum pension to Tony Walker Financial. Let's meet in person to discuss your retirement options. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your free, no obligation appointment. Let us help you today. As we record today's show on July 15th, 2025, Congress just approved what was supposed to be a very simple bill alleged to eliminate taxes on one's Social Security. However, As is usually the case when politicians are writing bills into law, its final form did little but complicate the matter of how much in taxes one might owe or not owe on one's Social Security. So to help us simplify the results of this big, beautiful bill and tell us whether you might be saving any taxes on your Social Security, let's turn the matter over to one of our resident tax certified specialists in our Bowling Green office, Miss Leanne Tinsley.
That's right, Tony. The final regulations appear to be in as it pertains to how Social Security benefits will be taxed, and it appears that, as usual, there are a lot of caveats to who will actually be affected by it. Individuals age 65 and older can claim a $6,000 deduction if their income is $75,000 or less. Married couples 65 and older filing jointly may claim up to $12,000 if their combined income does not exceed $150,000. The deduction phases out for incomes above these limits, disappearing entirely at $175,000 for individuals and $250,000 for couples. This bonus over 65 deduction is set to expire after 2028 unless Congress takes action.
So now that we're headlong into our second pillar to a perfect retirement plan, the idea of simplifying one's finances, well, this recent Tony in the Trenches led me to making sure I covered this very difficult subject matter in the affairs of what happens when someone dies and does not name a beneficiary in their 401k or IRA. It's a very simple thing to do, but what you're about to see, because this person didn't do so, it became very complicated. So let's read Tom's email. So the Tony in Trenches said this, and this was an actual case. Tony, we recently lost our adult son who was divorced and had one minor child. Little did we know that when we went to settle his estate, he had left his 401k to his estate. Will this cause any tax problems? And the answer you're getting ready to see is yes. But let me remind you of something. What I'm about to show you, I've shared this before. Folks, please pay close attention to this because this is a very simple thing you can do, but you have to understand the law and what happens to certain assets at death. So if you would, Derek, if you can throw up this graphic. I've used this for years. In fact, back in the 80s, when I was trained in the art of estate planning, back then you could only pass $600,000 without falling into all these estate taxes. I would go out and show this to business owners, landowners, people who had more than $600,000. And it basically sums up this way. Of all the assets you have, there's only 4 ways to own property. It can be solely in your name. You can have it jointly held with survivorship rights. It can be in a trust or contract. And of course, it can be assets that name a beneficiary. Now let's focus on beneficiary a minute. This would be assets like your 401k. It has a named beneficiary where you can name people in terms of who's going to get what when you die. Now 401k, 403b, TSP, 457, annuities go by beneficiary. There are a whole host of things that go by beneficiary. So in many cases, the last gentleman that just asked this question, what happened was the 401k beneficiary, which should have been named to his child or someone, you want a named beneficiary on those folks, he did not do that. He named his estate. So let's see what happens here. So when you do that, notice all of those assets now are probatable. When you name an estate as your beneficiary, which this gentleman did on his 401k, it now goes through the will, which goes to the estate, which is now probate. Now, what would happen on these other 3 assets? There is no probate because an asset which jointly held goes to the survivor trust. Many of you are rushing out and getting living trust. They're fine, don't get me wrong, but what they're trying to do is avoid probate. And then finally, assets by beneficiary. Again, all of your retirement accounts, annuities, life insurance, all 3 of those assets, listen, bypass probate. So in this case, what happened was all this gentleman had to do, since it would pass by beneficiary, is name a child or another person, and it would have totally avoided probate. But since this 401k went into the estate, guess what happened? Well, the estate has its own tax bracket. In fact, Aaron, throw this up full screen. See this tax bracket creep, folks? It's even worse for estates. So because this money had never been taxed, and I'll just change the names to protect the innocent, let's say it's $300,000, the $300,000 was payable to the estate, and immediately those taxes had to be paid at the estate tax rate. So the net of that's probably going to be about $200,000 that hopefully will go to his child. So the moral to the story, folks, you have to understand something. This is the way assets are going to pass. If you have assets spread all over God's creation, or maybe you have lost a child or something has changed in your situation, you've got to get these beneficiaries on your retirement accounts up to date, because otherwise you could be making a terrible mistake. It's a simple solution, something we help our clients with all the time, but if you don't get these done accurately or update them, it can create huge problems. And maybe that's you right now. Maybe you're sitting here thinking about all of your planning, that you don't have a plan, that you don't have someone experienced in both estate planning and retirement planning. Well, let's talk. And we've made this so easy to do. We call it the 10-minute free fiduciary phone call. And all you do is log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. You're going to click on that Let's Get Started button, and we'll arrange that phone call so you and I can talk right away. As usual, internet may not be your thing. No problem. Call us 24/7. That number is 877-499-9255. We'll be right back.
Our client spotlight today shines brightly on Mr. Doug Cox. And Mr. Cox, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here.
Now, first of all, tell us a little bit about what you did. I know you've recently retired, but what you're doing now.
Well, I retired in May. I did machinist work for many years, and right now just enjoying retirement and the good life, and working with my brother in the horse racing business. And now with me having some free time and being retired, it works out well. It really does.
And if you could go back in time, how did you first learn about Tony Walker Financial?
Well, about 5 or 6 years ago, I was just watching on the weekends. I'd watch your broadcast, and the more I watched, the more I thought, this sounds really interesting. Like I'd like to hear more of what y'all do, and from the saver's perspective of things, and that's what initiated my call to talk to you.
So really that idea, that message that we really don't like to take a lot of risk, we want to make sure our clients don't run out of money, that just resonated with you?
Yeah, fit me to a T, really. It really did, because I'm more into hanging on to what I got, and I'm not a big risk taker, gambler, that kind of thing, and it's worked out well.
What's it been like working with the staff here at Tony Walker Financial?
It's been great, because it's all, it's new territory to me, and I've been educated, I've found out a whole lot, and the complete staff, top to bottom, the crew in Bowling Green that you have, and here, it's just really been great.
Well, Mr. Cox, we appreciate your business, and thank you so much, and hopefully many years of service to come.
Oh, well, I hope so. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
Are you looking for an advisor you can trust? Then schedule your free phone call with Tony at TonyWalkerFinancial.com or call 877-499-9255.
Tired of the roller coaster ride of the stock market? Let Tony Walker show you how to smooth out the ride with your money. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and let's get started.
Who can you trust? It's one of the most important decisions you'll have to make. Question is, are you ready? Well, we're here to help at Tony Walker Financial. We care more about you than we do your money, and we have over 3,500 happy clients and an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau to prove it. Rolling over a 401k, confused about Social Security, maybe you're afraid of running out of money. Learn how to use and enjoy and protect your hard-earned money. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and let's get started.
Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement with the money missionary himself, Tony Walker.
Speaking of making things complicated, have you ever read this best-selling book of all time, referred to as the Bible? I mean, have you truly read it, word for word, from cover to cover? Well, I have. And on many, many occasions, yet after many years of reading and studying this book, I must admit, when I hold this word up to the things I see in this world, I sometimes find myself dazed and confused as to what I'm reading versus what I'm seeing, which is where having faith in this word as truth comes into play. So what is faith, and how can we keep our faith in God's truth simple? Well, let's first define faith, which is simply this: the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen. A simple definition, but sometimes very hard to follow unless we rely on the truths of God's Word. Knowing that God is not a God of confusion, how must we, as followers of Jesus Christ, be assured of this truth and maintain our faith in them while the world continues to complicate the things which should be simple? The answer? By focusing not just on God, but who God really is. In Charles Spurgeon's morning and evening devotional, Spurgeon reminds us of how to simplify our faith by remembering who this God is and why we were put on this earth in the first place. It's called the Trinity. And here's how you and I can grow and perfect our faith by learning to lean on and worship all three. First, there is God as our Father. Then, there is God as our Son. And finally, the Trinity concludes there is God, the Holy Spirit. You see, the Trinity reminds believers that all three gods are united and work in unison for the sole purpose of growing and perfecting our faith. All three work together to enrich our lives and to bring us closer to God as we lean on these truths. Yet, as Spurgeon warns, if we are not careful, we can forget that all three make up the whole counsel of God for who God really is. As Spurgeon puts it, all three are united in their deeds as in their essence. Their purpose, says Spurgeon, is to work together to produce a church without stain, wrinkle, or any blemish. Or in the world, according to Tony, all three are working together to create the same desired result: to restore fallen children who now know how to find truth and how to follow God until the day He calls us home. Amen? Well, speaking of taking a confusing topic and keeping things simple when it comes to growing and nurturing our faith, I've got a question for you savers out there who are dazed and confused by a financial world who knows nothing about keeping things simple and how an organized retirement planning firm might be your ticket to worrying less about your money in your retirement. We call it the Worry-Free Retirement Process. It's a process that is unlike any other retirement planning process in the industry. And I should know this because I created it. And this process for savers is available to anyone who qualifies. So, to see if this process is right for you, we have made this so easy for you and I to talk, and there's no cost or obligation on your part. We call it the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call. And here's how easy it is for you and I to visit about your situation. Just log on right now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com. You're going to click on that little red button and we'll arrange that phone call. Now, after the phone call, if it looks like we can be of help, you're going to be meeting with me. That's right, the owner of the company, someone with more than 41 years of experience, met in person with more than 20,000 people, and overseen and orchestrated more than 5,000 written game plans. And we are going to design a plan for you. So it sounds like you. If you're retired or nearing retirement, log on now. Or if the internet's not your thing, you can call us anytime. That number is 877-499-9255. Well, we've enjoyed our time together. Coming back next week with pillar number 3. But between now and then, you be worry-free and you make it a good one.